What if Carl Jung, father of analytical psychology, were called to testify in Sean Diddy Combs' trial? How might he dissect the masks we wear, the shadows we hide, and the archetypes at play in one of hip-hop's most notorious scandals? On May 5, 2025, Sean Combs, known globally as Puff Daddy, P. Diddy, or simply Diddy, stood before the United States District Court for the Southern District of New York and pleaded not guilty to a sweeping federal indictment that included racketeering, sex trafficking, and conspiracy. By mid-May, the trial had erupted into a media spectacle. Graphic testimonies from former associates and partners depicted allegations of coercion, threats, and manipulation at so-called freak-off parties stretching back 2 decades. The contrast between the man celebrated as a cultural icon and the accusations of hidden violence has captured public attention. But beneath the legal arguments lies a deeper psychological drama. What if we set aside the statutes and the statutes of limitation for a moment and imagine Carl Gustav Jung stepping into the courtroom to interpret the drama unfolding, the interplay of conscious ambition and unconscious impulse, of public mask and private shadow? Jung taught that each of us wears a persona, a social mask crafted to navigate the demands of culture and to garner the approval of others. For Sean Combs, the persona is nothing short of a masterwork in personal branding, a global mogul whose name graces best-selling albums, fashion lines, television networks, and beverage brands. His public image is one of benevolent authority, a mentor to emerging artists, a philanthropist funding youth programs, and a unifying figure in hip-hop culture. He appears on red carpets in bespoke suits, presides over star-studded events, and commands boardroom meetings with the confidence of a seasoned CEO. This carefully constructed mask has propelled him to the summit of influence. Yet Jung warned that an over-reliance on the persona risks hollowing out the self beneath it. When the mask grows so large that it defines the individual entirely, the genuine self can become buried, unrecognized even by its bearer. According to witness testimony, however, a very different narrative has emerged behind closed doors. Former partner Cassie Ventura described circumstances of coercion and control that prosecutors say typify a broader pattern. Party attendees have alleged that Combs' security teams confiscated passports to prevent departure, that refusal to participate in sexual activities was met with threats, and that complaints of mistreatment were met with intimidation. In Jungian terms, these troubling behaviors are not random aberrations. They can be seen as manifestations of the shadow, the collection of repressed desires, instincts, and impulses that the ego deems unacceptable. The greater the persona's luminescence, the more intense its corresponding shadow grows, driven underground only to re-emerge in destructive ways. Jung identified complexes as the engines of unconscious repetition, clusters of emotion, memory, and perception organized around a central theme, often rooted in early experiences. The prosecution's timeline suggests a pattern spanning more than 20 years. Invitations to freak-off gatherings, where consent was allegedly ignored, allegations of physical force, and accounts of psychological coercion. This 2-decade arc implies more than opportunistic misconduct. It indicates a recurring power complex, an unconscious drive for dominance and control that has been replayed in similar settings and with similar victims. Jung might hypothesize that an unresolved need for validation or an early experience of powerlessness gave birth to a compensatory urge to dominate. If these impulses remain unacknowledged, the psyche enacts the same drama repeatedly, with escalating stakes and deeper harm. In Jung's schema, archetypes are the universal templates of human experience. innate psychic structures that shape how we perceive the world and ourselves. The courtroom cast in this trial illustrates these timeless patterns. Combs himself occupies the figure of the ruler, authority, order, control. He has built an empire on his mastery of music, business strategy, and cultural trends. Witnesses who recount fear and subjugation assume the role of the victim or innocent, their vulnerability resonating with archetypal themes of betrayal and rescue. Defense attorneys, with their strategic objections and narrative reframing, enact the trickster, sowing doubt and misdirection. The judge and jury, charged with impartially weighing evidence and rendering verdict, represent the self-archetype, the center of personality striving for balance and integration. Viewed through this lens, the trial becomes more than legal process. It is a mythic drama in which archetypal forces vie for resolution. A critical mechanism in Jungian psychology is projection, the unconscious attribution of disowned qualities to others. When individuals deny aspects of themselves, anger, envy, lust, they often perceive those qualities in those around them. In this trial, each side projects. The prosecution projects predatory intent onto Combs, insisting that coercion and violence were integral to his private affairs. The defense projects opportunism and fabrication onto witnesses, arguing that their testimonies are motivated by personal grievances or financial gain. Broader public discourse reflects projection as well. Some fans see Combs as a hero unfairly maligned, others as a villain long shielded by fame. Jung would caution that unless Combs confronts his own shadow, the darker instincts he may deny, he will continue to battle internal conflicts as though they were solely external adversaries. For Jung, the process of individuation, the lifelong journey toward wholeness, requires integrating the psyche's disparate parts, persona, shadow, anima or animus, and the unconscious. Imagine what individuation might look like for a figure of Combs' stature. First, true individuation begins with confrontation, an unflinching admission of one's faults, wrongdoings, and harmful impulses. In a therapeutic setting, this could take the form of introspective sessions, journaling, and guided analysis that unearth the roots of the power complex. Second, reflection, grieving the harm caused, dismantling defense mechanisms, and acknowledging the humanity of those he allegedly harmed. Third, reintegration, consciously transforming the need for control into constructive leadership, using influence to empower rather than dominate, to listen rather than command. Failure to undertake these steps risks further fragmentation. The persona may crack under pressure, the shadow may erupt more violently, and the self remains split. But this case is not just the story of one man's psyche, it reflects a broader collective shadow. The entertainment industry, like any powerful institution, harbors unexamined abuses of power. The #MeToo movement exposed systemic patterns of exploitation. High-profile trials forced society to confront uncomfortable truths about consent, privilege, and accountability. Jung believed that societies, like individuals, repress undesired qualities until they can no longer contain them. When these repressions surface, through scandals, protests, or legal actions, they demand collective integration. Perhaps the real indictment is of a culture that prized celebrity and profit over personal dignity and ethical responsibility. Of course, applying Jungian analysis to an ongoing trial carries limitations. Critics might argue that psychoanalytic interpretation risks over-psychologizing behaviors that have concrete legal and moral dimensions. Without direct access to Combs's personal history, his childhood experiences, inner conflicts, or private reflections, any psychological profile remains speculative. Additionally, Jung's theories emerged in early 20th century Europe. Translating them to the context of 21st century American hip-hop culture may overlook socio-historical nuances. Yet, even with these caveats, the value of this exercise lies in illuminating patterns that legal documentation alone cannot capture: the recurring drive for control, the dramatic clash of personas, and the archetypal energies shaping public consciousness. Whether Sean Combs is ultimately convicted or exonerated, Carl Jung's framework offers a powerful lens through which to view the unfolding saga. It reminds us that persona and shadow are two sides of the same coin, and that true power emerges not from unchecked dominance, but from the integration of our darkest impulses into conscious awareness. As this trial continues to unfold, its ultimate verdict may determine Combs's legal fate, but Jung would argue that the deeper question concerns the fate of his soul. If you found this exploration of Jung and Diddy compelling, please like this video and share it with your friends who love psychology, pop culture, or both. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you won't miss our next deep dive. And tell us in the comments, which archetype resonates most with the figures in this case, and what shadows are you tempted to project onto others? Let's start a conversation about the masks we wear and the truths they conceal.